In the small, unremarkable town of Maplewood, life moved at a leisurely pace, where everyone knew their neighbors and familiarity bred a comforting monotony. Among the residents was Clara Adams, a 32-year-old librarian whose life seemed as orderly and predictable as the books she cherished. Clara had always found solace in the pages of novels, preferring the worlds they created over her own. Her days were filled with the scent of aged paper and the soft hum of whispered conversations. Yet, beneath her calm exterior lay a tempest of unresolved emotions. Clara's childhood was marked by a profound sense of loss. When she was just 10 years old, her younger brother Sam vanished without a trace during a family outing. The search for him stretched into weeks, but as time passed, hope faded like the autumn leaves that blanketed their backyard. The absence of his laughter and the void left in their home became an unspoken wound that never healed. Clara's parents tried to cope in their own ways. Her mother buried herself in work while her father withdrew into silence. This left Clara to navigate her grief alone, and over the years, she learned to mask her sadness with a smile. As an adult, Clara immersed herself in her work at the local library, finding comfort in routine and the predictable rhythm of sorting and shelving books. She believed that if she maintained order in her life, perhaps she could keep the chaos of her emotions at bay. Yet, as much as she tried to suppress her feelings, they would occasionally surface like ghosts from the past, haunting her in quiet moments. She often found herself staring at the empty chair across from her at home or lingering too long on memories of shared adventures with Sam. Despite the peaceful facade she presented to the world, Clara felt an overwhelming sense of isolation. Friends would invite her out for coffee or to movie nights, but she often declined, preferring to retreat into the comforting embrace of her books. She worried that no one truly understood the depth of her sorrow or the weight of her memories. As days turned into months and months into years, Clara's emotional struggles began to take a toll on her well-being. She wrestled with anxiety and bouts of depression that would leave her feeling drained and hopeless. One afternoon in late spring, while organizing a section on self-help literature, Clara stumbled upon a worn-out book titled, "Finding Yourself After Loss." The cover was faded, and its pages were yellowed with age, yet something about it called to her. Without thinking twice, she pulled it from the shelf and tucked it under her arm. That evening, as she settled into her favorite chair with a cup of herbal tea, Clara opened the book and began reading. The author's words resonated deeply within her. They spoke of grief not as a linear path but as a winding road filled with unexpected turns. As she read on, Clara felt a flicker of hope igniting within her, a longing to confront the emotions she had buried for so long. She realized that perhaps it was time to face her past instead of allowing it to overshadow her present. With every chapter she read, she contemplated how much Sam had meant to her and how his absence had shaped not only her childhood but also her adult life. This moment marked a turning point for Clara, a whisper urging her to embark on a journey not just through books but through her own heart. The realization ignited a spark of determination within her. It was time to embrace her emotions fully and seek healing from the shadows that had lingered too long. Little did she know that this decision would set off a series of events that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, loss, and ultimately, herself. As Clara navigated her days immersed in the comfort of books, a sudden event would shatter her fragile sense of stability and propel her toward an unavoidable confrontation with her emotions. It began on an unremarkable Tuesday afternoon when she received a phone call that would change everything. The voice on the other end was filled with urgency and confusion, belonging to a former classmate she hadn't spoken to in years. "Clara, it's about your brother," the voice said, causing Clara's heart to drop and rise all at once. The caller explained that she had seen a news segment about a missing person in another town who bore a striking resemblance to Sam. The details were eerily parallel, around the same age they would have been had he grown up, similar facial features, and even the same curious spirit that once lit up the lives of those around him. Clara felt her breath quicken as she listened. For over 20 years, the absence of Sam had left an indelible mark on her life, yet now there was a flicker of hope, a possibility that he might still be alive. Overwhelmed by the whiplash of emotions turning within her, she ended the call and sat in silence for what felt like hours, wrestling with disbelief and renewed hope. That evening, Clara stared at the self-help book lying open on her coffee table, its spine creased and pages marked with bits of wisdom about grief and healing. She hadn't anticipated how deeply those words had begun to resonate with her until this moment. Facing the prospect of seeing someone who could be Sam brought back unresolved memories, the laughter they once shared, their childhood adventures, And most hauntingly, the day he disappeared. In defiance of her instinct to retreat into turmoil or despair, Clara decided that she needed to take action. She couldn't allow uncertainty to consume her. She had spent too many years living in shadows created by grief. With resolve surging through her veins, she began to research, scouring newspapers for stories about missing persons matching Sam's description. Each article reminded her of painful memories but also reignited a flicker of determination. The next day found Clara driving to the neighboring town where she discovered more information about the individual in question, a young man named Ethan who had gone missing under suspicious circumstances just 2 months earlier. The thought that they might share more than just looks pushed Clara into a whirlwind of emotions varying from anxiety to hopefulness. At the community center where Ethan's vigil was being held, Clara entered hesitantly among the buzz of worried family members and friends exchanging their stories of loss. Her heart pounded as she introduced herself to strangers who were grappling with their pain while trying desperately to remain hopeful for their own loved ones. As she stood there with kindred spirits enveloped by sorrow and longing for resolution, Clara's thoughts spiraled inward. She realized that she'd built walls around herself not only against grief but against any semblance of connection or vulnerability, walls that now needed tearing down if she were ever going to navigate this unfamiliar territory again. The event stirred something deep within her, a combination of longing for closure regarding Sam while grappling with a new sense of hope about Ethan's story, and it compelled Clara to confront the ghosts firmly embedded in her past. Though steeped in sadness, standing among so many grieving hearts felt painfully familiar, it also ignited an urgent desire for clarity amid confusion. It was there at that vigil, filled with sorrow but brimming with empathy, that Clara began to understand that confronting these feelings wasn't just about acknowledging loss. It was also about embracing hope after darkness. Voices echoed around her, sharing grief-laden stories woven together by collective loss. Clara made a silent pledge to seek answers not only for Sam but also for herself, ready at last to reclaim parts of herself long forgotten amidst heavy veils of solitude. The days following Clara's attendance at Ethan's vigil felt surreal. Every morning she awoke with a sense of anticipation, each moment pregnant with the possibility of discovering something significant about her brother. Yet alongside the flickers of hope lay an unsettling undercurrent of confusion and uncertainty. She found herself teetering on the precipice of emotions she had carefully sealed away for years, now threatening to burst forth in unexpected ways. Initially, Clara grappled with denial. She rationalized that this new information about a missing person who bore Sam's resemblance was merely a coincidence, setting her heart on a tightrope between yearning and skepticism. After all, how could she reasonably entertain the prospect that Sam might be alive? Her mind swirled with all the past scenarios, hopeless searches, whispered reassurances, and ultimately silence. She thought back to the way her parents had clung to denial after his disappearance. Lost in their own worlds of grief, Clara had sworn she would never follow in their footsteps. Yet here she was, futility echoing in her mind as she fought against the truth she craved. In her attempt to process these feelings, Clara sought refuge in her daily routines. The library, meticulous organization, offered a semblance of control amidst the storm brewing within her heart, yet deep down, she could feel the pressure building as each day passed without resolution. Friends began to notice her distracted demeanor during casual lunch gatherings, their concerned glances aggravating her frustration. "I'm fine," she insisted with a grin that fell short, for inside she was anything but fine. Anger bubbled up within her unexpectedly during a quiet evening at home. As she stared at the empty chair across from her where Sam once sat, an ordinary reminder now brimming with depth, rage coursed through her veins. How could he have left them without a trace? Why did he not come back? If he had chosen to disappear from their lives, how could it be that he bore no consequence but to cause endless heartbreak? The walls seemed to close in around her as tears of fury streamed down her cheeks. On one particularly chaotic night, Clara found herself pacing the living room floor, emotions consuming her as memories flooded back uninvited. Thoughts of summer days spent building forts or sibling arguments over trivial matters became unbearable reminders of everything she had lost. Desperation took hold of her like an iron grip. Unable to contain it any longer, she grabbed a nearby pillow and screamed into its soft embrace. The sound echoed like a funeral dirge through the empty house, amplified by the echoing silence that surrounded her. But amid the chaos of confusion, denial, and anger lay a yearning for truth, a deep-seated need to confront not just the elusive specter of Sam but also the haunting presence of her own fears. Clara sensed that beneath her turbulent emotions was a path leading towards something more profound than loss. It was a longing for connection and resolution that propelled her forward as she sat surrounded by remnants of her childhood. Photos lined against the walls capturing fleeting moments. Clara knew that retreating from this emotional journey was no longer an option. With each wave of grief she navigated surfaced an implicit promise to honor her brother's memory by reclaiming parts of herself desperately buried away beneath layers of sorrow. Thus began Clara's emotional journey, a tumultuous ascent, intertwined with confusion and anger, a path she would have to travel if there was any hope at all in finally uncovering truths held captive by time and fear. Embracing this tumultuous yet necessary excavation would either leave her shattered in despair or open doors to healing that had long remained shut tight. With determination steadying her resolve, Clara felt ready to unravel the threads woven throughout her life that tethered her so tightly to past shadows. She could see just beyond them, future waiting patiently for her to step into it with open arms. As Clara delved deeper into her emotional journey, the presence of key figures in her life became increasingly significant, each one influencing her path to healing in their own unique way. Among them was her best friend, Mia, a vibrant and compassionate soul who had been Clara's anchor since childhood. Mia's unwavering support provided a stark contrast to Clara's internal struggles, offering a light amidst the darkness that often enveloped her thoughts. Mia had always been the sort of friend who could intuitively sense when something was amiss. She would often show up at Clara's door unannounced with a warm meal or an armful of flowers, determined to draw Clara out of her shell. "You can't keep burying yourself in those books forever," she would gently chide, her tone a mix of concern and affection. "You need to talk about this. I'm here for you." Though Clara appreciated Mia's efforts, she often found herself resisting the emotional intimacy that Mia encouraged. During one of their coffee dates at their favorite cafe, as steam rose from their mugs, Mia broached the subject that Clara had been avoiding. "You know, I saw you at Ethan's vigil," she said cautiously. "It seemed like it stirred up a lot for you. Have you thought about what that means?" Clara felt a flush of anger rise within her at the intrusion. "I'm fine, Mia," she snapped defensively, even as her heart trembled beneath the weight of unspoken truths, but deep down, she knew Mia cared deeply and wanted to help. It only intensified Clara's feelings of guilt and frustration for not being able to articulate what lay beneath her surface. On the other side of this emotional spectrum was Clara's mother, Evelyn, whose grief had morphed into a protective barrier over the years. Evelyn was a complex figure in Clara's life, both an emotional presence and a source of frustration. The tension between them often escalated during family gatherings when they would share forced smiles and conversations laced with unacknowledged pain. Evelyn had become adept at avoiding discussions about Sam. She preferred to keep memories tucked away like fragile glass ornaments rather than risk shattering them by facing reality. When Clara tentatively brought up Sam during a dinner one evening, desperate for connection, Evelyn's face fell and she quickly changed the subject to safer waters, leaving Clara feeling isolated once more. "Mom, we can't just pretend he didn't exist," Clara insisted one night after dinner as they cleaned up together. "I need to talk about him." Evelyn's response was immediate, infused with both sadness and anger. "What good will that do? He's gone, Clara. Dwelling on it won't bring him back." The words cut deeper than intended, revealing just how diverging their coping mechanisms were. Where Clara longed for acknowledgement and connection through shared grief, Evelyn sought solace in avoidance, a painful rift that would only widen if left unaddressed. Then there was Tom, a local journalist who had recently moved to Maplewood and became intrigued by Clara's story during casual conversations at the library. Unlike Mia's gentle prodding or Evelyn's emotional barricade, Tom presented an entirely different challenge. His relentless curiosity sparked something within Clara, a mix of irritation and intrigue. "Why do you avoid talking about your brother? It's like you're scared of him," Tom once remarked during one of their interactions, his eyes searching hers for answers. His bluntness caught her off guard. It was as if he had peeled back layers she wasn't ready to expose yet. Clara bristled but couldn't deny the flicker of truth in his words. His persistence forced her to confront parts of herself she'd long buried beneath denial and hurt. Yet instead of pushing Tom away like she instinctively wanted to do, she felt compelled to engage with him, perhaps out of frustration or maybe because he represented an opportunity to find her voice. Amidst the noise, each of these relationships challenged Clara in ways she hadn't anticipated. They forced her to confront not only the memories of Sam but also her own fears, of connection, vulnerability, and ultimately acceptance, through Mia's unwavering friendship, Evelyn's conflicted love, and Tom's probing curiosity, Clara began to understand that healing would not come solely from introspection. It would also emerge from embracing these relationships and their inherent complexities on her path toward reclaiming herself. As Clara continued on her path of self-discovery, moments of reflection became increasingly significant, offering her the opportunity to examine her past and the emotions that had long been suppressed. One evening, she found herself alone in her dimly lit living room, surrounded by the familiar scent of old books and the soft glow of a single lamp. It was one of those rare quiet moments when the outside world faded away, leaving only her thoughts swirling in solitude. Clara picked up a photo album she had not opened in years, its cover worn and dusty. The moment she flipped it open, nostalgia washed over her. There were pictures from a time before loss, her family gathered together, Sam's bright smile illuminating every page. Each photograph felt like a portal to a different world, one brimming with laughter and innocence. Yet as she turned each page, a heaviness settled in her chest. The stark contrast between those joyful moments and her current reality was almost unbearable. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, Clara traced the edges of an image where she and Sam were playing in their backyard. She remembered that day vividly, how they had built an elaborate fort from old sheets and imagined themselves as explorers on a grand adventure. Yet now that memory felt tainted with sorrow. It reminded her of everything she had lost. "How could you leave me?" Clara murmured to the stillness around her, tears pooling in her eyes. The question reverberated through her mind like an echo trapped in time. These reflections sparked something deep within Clara, a desire to confront not only the memories of Sam but also her own emotional landscape. After closing the album, she decided to write in the journal she had kept for years but seldom opened. As she set pen to paper, words poured out like a dam breaking open. They flowed freely and unfiltered. "I am angry," she wrote initially. "Angry at myself for being stuck and angry at Sam for disappearing." With each line, she uncovered layers of guilt intertwined with anger and regret that had been festering beneath the surface. One particularly poignant entry focused on regret. The regret of not having taken action sooner after Sam's disappearance or for not speaking about him to others throughout the years. Clara realized how deeply silence had shaped her existence. It served as both protector and prison. "Why was I so afraid?" she questioned herself, recognizing how fear had dictated so many of her choices since that fateful day. Another moment of reflection came unexpectedly during a visit to Ethan's vigil again. Standing amongst strangers who shared similar losses forced Clara to confront her own pain head-on. There was something cathartic about being surrounded by those who understood. The shared glances filled with empathy and sorrow made Clara ponder her own journey even further, and witnessing their grief mirrored back at her. Clara felt an urge to speak out about Sam instead of hiding his memory away. It was a pivotal realization. Perhaps by acknowledging their stories collectively, she could find strength within her. As days turned into weeks, these moments of introspection crafted a new narrative for Clara. A narrative where pain didn't have to define her entirely, but could coexist alongside hope and resilience. One afternoon while sitting at the library during lunch break, Clara glanced out toward the trees lining Maplewood streets. Their vibrant leaves danced in the gentle breeze reminiscent of youth's fleeting beauty. It dawned on her then that life continues even after loss. Nature flourishes despite winter's cold grasp, and perhaps so could she. "I want to learn how to live again," she wrote down fervently that day in her journal, feeling lighter yet more determined than ever. Through these reflective moments, Clara began piecing together fragments of herself long forgotten amidst grief's clutches, emerging slowly yet surely as someone willing to embrace both joy and sorrow as vital parts of an ongoing journey toward healing and self-acceptance. Each insight carved deeper understanding into her heart. It was clear now that this emotional expedition would be both challenging and transformative, an invitation into a life fully lived beyond sorrow's shadow. The emotional journey Clara had been on had reached a boiling point, the pressure building steadily within her until it could no longer be contained. The spark that ignited this tension was not only the unresolved pain of losing her brother Sam but also the external conflict brewing with her mother, Evelyn. Their relationship had grown increasingly strained, a complex web of unspoken grievances and emotional walls that neither seemed willing to break down. It all came to a head one rainy afternoon when Evelyn invited Clara over for tea. The air inside their cozy kitchen was thick with silence as Clara stirred her cup, Watching raindrops patter against the window, she could feel the weight of a conversation looming, the kind that had been postponed far too long. Clara, Evelyn began hesitantly, stirring her own tea. I've been thinking, maybe we should look into those missing person reports together. Her voice trembled slightly, revealing an uncharacteristic vulnerability. Clara felt a rush of anger bubble up within her at the suggestion. What good will it do? It's been years. You want to go poking through old wounds instead of acknowledging how much we've both suffered? Her voice rose higher than she intended, sharp as broken glass. Evelyn recoiled slightly, hurt flashing across her face. I just thought it might bring you peace, she replied quietly. Peace? Clara spat back, unable to suppress the flood of feelings poised on the edge of release. You think digging up the past will bring us peace? You've hidden from this for so long. I can't pretend anymore, we are not fine. Each word echoed loudly in the small kitchen, fueled by years' worth of repressed emotions. That moment pinned them both against each other like two opposing forces. A storm brewing inside Clara threatened to swallow her whole, while Evelyn seemed trapped in layers of grief and denial. Yet that confrontation was what they both needed, an explosive eruption that might finally clear the air between them. After storming out of her mother's house, Clara found herself wandering aimlessly through Maplewood streets, soaked from the rain and emotionally drained. Despite her anger, she felt an irresistible urge to seek solace. The kind she once found within books but now eluded her altogether, in search of answers. Or perhaps simply escape. She headed back to the library where familiar shelves stretched out like friends. Who would understand better than these quiet companions? As she ran her fingers along spines dusted with age and wisdom, she stumbled upon an old book about loss, one she had read long ago but somehow resonated even more deeply now. Deciding it was worth revisiting, she settled into a reading nook with it cradled in her lap. Clara read through passages about healing and acceptance. Tears streamed down her cheeks uncontrollably. It was as if each word peeled away layers painted thickly over time by grief and fear. She recalled every glance at photographs of Sam, his laugh echoing in time with moments recorded in carefully preserved ink and paper, all that remained after so many years lost without closure. But suddenly something shifted within her as she crossed paths with a particular passage urging its readers not just to wallow in sorrow, but embrace life fully while honoring those they've lost. And therein lay clarity. Perhaps instead of sticking solely to memories trapped behind closed doors, allowing grief room to breathe could usher healing into fragility. With fierce determination ignited deep inside Clara's core like embers ready for flames, it dawned upon her. This was no time for passive recollection or mere longing. It was time for action. She realized she had choices to make, not just about seeking potential truths surrounding Sam, but regarding herself as well. A rebirth steeped in honesty, yet fraught with uncertainty loomed ahead. This newfound resolve spiraled into clarity underlined by agitation. Her internal conflict formed sharper edges. Would Clara have the strength to pursue not only answers, but also reconciliation with Evelyn? With decisions laid bare before her heart, confrontational, yet empowering, the climactic moment materialized. Diving headfirst into what lay hidden behind fear's veil, or lingering within protective bubbles forevermore. For better or worse, something momentous stirred inside. A catalyst now crystallizing what had been mere ideals on paper into tangible choices, leading towards transformation. Embracing hope amid darkness while forging forward toward truths waiting silently along pathways untrodden thus far ahead where living, in all its raw beauty, beckoned gently from beyond grim shadows, opaquely cast by loss. Clara sat in the library, the familiar scent of aged paper providing a comforting backdrop as she processed the emotional turmoil from her confrontation with Evelyn. The echoes of their heated discussion still lingered in her mind, a catalyst for change that had awakened something dormant within her. As she reflected on their exchange, Clara felt a warmth blooming inside, a quiet conviction that she was ready to confront the shadows that had long defined her existence. On an impulse fueled by this newfound resolve, Clara decided to revisit the vigil for Ethan one last time. For weeks, the gathering had been a source of both solace and despair, but she felt drawn back there now. A final chance to connect not just with others who shared their grief, but also with herself. As she arrived at the community center, emotions churned within her like a storm brewing before rain. The atmosphere was saturated with quiet sobs and whispered support as families and friends clung to one another in shared anguish. Yet amid this sorrow, Clara felt strangely empowered. She understood that finding closure did not mean forgetting Sam, but rather embracing his memory and allowing it to coexist with her life. She spotted familiar faces from previous vigils chatting softly in small circles, and felt a sense of belonging emerge within her heart. As she joined the gathering, Clara listened intently to stories being shared. Each tale encapsulated love, loss, and memories. They intertwined like threads forming a tapestry rich in humanity. What struck Clara most was how openly everyone spoke about their absent loved ones. There were no shadows lurking behind their words, no fear of bringing up pain. It was these stories that forged connections among those grieving alongside one another, revealing just how universal loss could be. In that moment of shared vulnerability, something profound stirred inside Clara. A realization that she too could articulate her own experience instead of hiding behind silence. When it came time for attendees to share their memories aloud, her heart raced as she stood up, an innate thirst for expression overshadowing any lingering fear. My brother's name was Sam. Clara began hesitantly at first but found strength in the warmth surrounding her. He went missing when I was 10. Every word became like a brushstroke painting vivid scenes of laughter and sunshine that had been lost for so long. As memories poured forth, their childhood adventures building forts or exploring around Maplewood. A floodgate opened wide within her heart, allowing light to illuminate shadows once cloaked by sorrow. With each story shared aloud beneath flickering candlelight, Clara felt layers of grief peeling back like an onion exposed to fresh air. Emotions surged forward, pain laced with gratitude, and somehow transformed into acceptance. In shedding light onto what lay concealed in darkness for decades, she experienced relief. Tears streamed down her cheeks freely now, not as signs of weakness, but as affirmations of love shared between siblings who would always hold one another close despite distance. When Clara finally finished speaking amidst gentle applause from those surrounding her, the previously locked doors within began to yield slowly. A feeling akin to rebirth coursed through every fiber of her being. Healing was possible through connection. That night marked a turning point not only in recognizing Sam's significance to her life, but also acknowledging how deeply intertwined he remained even amidst pain. The reality made its presence known in rich detail during moments filled with hope and determination, rather than shackled despair. Clara walked home under starlit skies feeling lighter, as though chains binding her spirit had snapped. Fragments of self once lost now coalescing into resilience steeped in vulnerability, ready at last step forth into the unknown future, where possibility shimmered brightly on pathways, waiting patiently beyond valleys marked by years spent lingering within shadows cast by loss's weighty embrace. With the weight of her shared memories still fresh, Clara began to actively pursue her path to healing, determined to step into a new chapter of her life. The first step came almost immediately after the vigil. She made a conscious decision to reconnect with Mia more intentionally. Their friendship had always been a sanctuary for Clara, yet it had faltered under the strain of her silence and isolation. One Saturday morning, Clara invited Mia over for brunch, a simple meal of pancakes and fresh fruit that carried the warmth of their childhood together. They sat at the kitchen table, laughter mixing with the aroma of maple syrup as Clara opened up about her experiences from the vigil. "I felt so seen, so understood," she confessed, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "For the first time in years, I spoke about Sam without feeling like I was burdening anyone." Mia's eyes sparkled with encouragement as she listened intently. "Clara, that's incredible. Talking about him is part of honoring his memory. You're not just carrying this alone anymore." The conversation flowed effortlessly as Mia shared her own struggles and triumphs, reminding Clara of the importance of mutual support and healing. Emboldened by this reconnection, Clara took another step and reached out to Tom, the journalist who had sparked her curiosity during their earlier discussions. She appreciated his straightforwardness and his willingness to explore uncomfortable topics. They met for coffee at a quaint cafe on Maplewood's Main Street, where sunlight streamed through the windows illuminating their conversation. "Tom," she began hesitantly, I've been thinking about how I can turn my grief into something positive. She explained her desire to advocate for missing persons, sharing Sam's story to raise awareness and help others in similar situations. Tom leaned in, intrigued. That's a powerful idea. There are organizations that could benefit from your voice and experience. His enthusiasm ignited a fire within Clara. She realized that taking action would not only honor Sam but could also inspire hope in others. As they discussed potential avenues for advocacy, Clara felt a shift within herself. A surge of purpose replacing the fog of despair that had clouded her for so long. She began researching local organizations focused on missing persons and even discovered an upcoming community fundraiser aimed at aiding families affected by similar tragedies. Eager to contribute, Clara signed up as a volunteer, feeling invigorated by the prospect of channeling her pain into something meaningful. Simultaneously, she knew she had to face her mother again. The unresolved tensions between them still loomed large despite their earlier confrontation. So, Clara arranged another visit with Evelyn, this time approaching it with compassion rather than confrontation. "Mom," she began softly once seated at the kitchen table, "I want us to talk about Sam together. We need to be honest about our feelings and grief." Evelyn looked up from her cup of tea, surprise etched across her face but also a flicker of hope. "I'd like that," she replied cautiously. Together they shared stories of their memories with Sam, Evelyn recalling moments from his childhood while Clara chipped in with anecdotes from their teenage years. As they spoke, remnants of pain gradually transformed into shared laughter, bridging the chasm that had separated them for so long. Through these ongoing conversations with both Mia and Evelyn, Clara experienced profound insights into her emotions and relationships. The healing power embedded in vulnerability became evident. She learned that opening herself up not only released pent-up sorrow but also deepened her connections with those she loved. As weeks passed, Clara found herself embracing new adventures, attending support groups at local community centers where others shared their experiences too, realizing that healing was a journey defined by many steps forward intertwined with moments of reflection and acknowledgement. With every conversation about Sam, every act of outreach, Clara cultivated resilience within herself that blossomed beautifully against past shadows. Each stride taken toward healing illuminated pathways previously hidden behind grief. Clara felt empowered and ready to forge ahead as she transformed both herself and her pain into a narrative filled with purpose, love, and ultimately acceptance. As Clara continued her journey of healing, the relationships she had once taken for granted began to evolve in profound ways. The connection with Mia deepened significantly as they became each other's pillars of support. Their brunch conversations transformed into regular check-ins filled with laughter, encouragement, and shared vulnerabilities. Clara found herself confiding in Mia about her advocacy work for missing persons, sharing her plans to volunteer and raise awareness in Sam's memory. Mia, inspired by Clara's newfound purpose, also began to explore her own passions more deeply. She started a small community project focused on mental health awareness, drawing on her experiences with anxiety and the importance of communication. "We're all navigating our own paths," Mia told Clara one sunny afternoon as they prepared for an awareness event together. "I want to help others find their voices too." Clara's heart swelled with pride at the sight of her friend blossoming and recognized how they had both grown into more resilient versions of themselves, motivating each other through their journeys. Meanwhile, Evelyn's transformation was equally significant. After their emotional conversations about Sam and their shared grief, she gradually opened up about her own experiences and guilt surrounding his disappearance. One afternoon, while they sorted through old photographs together, Evelyn admitted, "I always thought that by not talking about him, I was protecting you from pain, but I realize now that it only pushed us further apart." This admission marked a pivotal moment for both mother and daughter. It allowed them to rebuild trust and understanding forged through honesty rather than silence. They began creating new memories together, taking walks around Maplewood Park or cooking favorite family recipes that brought up cherished memories of Sam without shying away from the truth of their loss. Each shared moment helped to heal previously fragile bonds. As Clara pursued her advocacy work with renewed fervor, she was excited by the opportunity to collaborate with Tom on community outreach events. Together, they organized a fundraiser that aimed to support families affected by missing persons cases. Tom's journalistic expertise paired with Clara's personal story created a compelling narrative that drew community members in droves. On the night of the event, surrounded by friends and advocates alike, Clara stepped onto the makeshift stage to speak directly from her heart. Losing my brother Sam changed my life forever, she began, feeling the warmth of supportive faces surrounding her. But through this journey of rediscovery, I've come to understand that sharing our stories is one of the greatest acts of love we can offer. Not just for those we've lost, but also for those still navigating their struggles. Her voice resonated with authenticity and strength as she spoke about using personal loss as a catalyst for change. In that moment, under twinkling lights and hopeful faces, Clara witnessed how far she had come, not just alone but alongside those who loved her fiercely enough to walk beside her through darkness into renewed light. The applause that followed felt less like a culmination and more like a celebration, a testament to struggle overcoming adversity. By embracing vulnerability and opening herself up to others' emotions, Mia's dreams, Evelyn's regrets, Clara discovered an intricate web of connection binding them all together through love and shared loss. Each person's growth became integral to creating a supportive community grounded in empathy rather than isolation. Weeks turned into months leading up to another anniversary marking Sam's disappearance, now transformed into a day dedicated to remembrance featuring celebration rather than sorrow. Clara realized that healing was not merely linear. It ebbed and flowed in waves shaped by interactions with those around her. With each step forward alongside Mia and Evelyn, and even Tom, they had built a network woven from resilience and mutual understanding that transformed grief's sharp edges into something softer. Love intermingled with hope threading through life's moments again, a reminder that as they navigated their journeys individually, it only served to deepen the bond they shared collectively against shadows cast long before but now radiating brighter than ever with acceptance guiding them homeward always together despite everything life had thrown their way. As Clara stood in front of the community center, preparing for the annual event dedicated to honoring missing persons, a wave of reflection washed over her. This year felt markedly different. It was not simply a day of remembrance but a celebration of resilience and community spirit. The air was filled with laughter, conversations echoing through the hall as people shared their stories and experiences. Clara looked around and felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this moment. Clara had come a long way since the isolating days of her grief over Sam's disappearance. Through each heart-wrenching conversation with Mia, each shared memory with Evelyn, and each encounter with Tom, she had discovered pieces of herself that had been buried deep beneath layers of sorrow and fear. The once constricting weight of grief had transformed into a bittersweet blend of remembrance and hope. The event unfolded beautifully. Posters adorned the walls, artfully designed by local artists, showcasing photographs and narratives submitted by families searching for their loved ones. Clara had contributed her own piece to this tapestry, an emotional portrayal of Sam that conveyed not just loss but also love, warmth, and enduring connection. As she mingled among attendees, she couldn't help but witness the collective strength in the room, a testament to what could be achieved when individuals chose vulnerability over silence. At the podium, Clara felt her heart race as she prepared to share her story yet again. But this time it felt different. It was less about standing in front of a crowd and more about galvanizing a community into action. Breathing deeply, she smiled at the familiar faces in the crowd. "Thank you for being here today," she began, her voice steady yet full of emotion. "This day is not just about loss. It's about raising our voices and reaching out to others who can relate to this indescribable pain." With each word, Clara recounted her journey, how she navigated treacherous waters filled with despair and isolation before ultimately finding powerful connections that helped light her way. As she spoke about Sam, the memories of laughter, adventure, and undying love, the audience leaned in closer, empathy radiating from their engaged expressions. Her story resonated deeply as she emphasized the importance of sharing one's experience. By opening ourselves up to others, we keep our loved ones alive in our hearts. Applause broke out as Clara concluded her speech, tears mingling with those in attendance who resonated with her story of hope amid adversity. It was more than just a farewell to the hurt. It was a resurgence filled with purpose and drive meaningfully forged through community bonds. Following her address, Clara embraced Mia tightly, feeling an immense appreciation for their mutual growth throughout this experience. "I truly couldn't have done any of this without you," she whispered, grateful for their unwavering support. Evelyn joined them shortly after, tears glimmering like precious jewels reflecting sunlight. Her mother's pride radiated warmth that surrounded them like an embrace. "You've become someone I'm so proud of," Evelyn said softly as she held Clara's hands, Squeezing them gently, moments like these crystallized an important truth in Clara's heart. While healing from the trauma of losing Sam would always be an integral part of her journey, it did not solely define who she was becoming. She had learned that growth often thrives in connection, even through unimaginable loss, propelling relationships into transformative forces capable of fostering understanding and acceptance. As dusk settled over Maplewood and lanterns flickered softly into life outside the center's doors that evening, Clara found herself smiling at friends, family members, and even strangers who now felt like allies on this shared path toward healing. They were gathered together not merely weighed down by sorrow but buoyed by hope, a vivid reminder that life could be embraced despite its inherent fragility. Reflecting on everything that had transpired since embarking on this emotional adventure, she understood now that true healing does not mean forgetting what one has lost but rather integrating those memories into a narrative rich with love and new possibilities waiting ahead. With eyes open wide to what lay before her on this journey toward self-discovery, Clara stepped forward into a future brimming with promise where every step began anew, lingering softly alongside cherished remembrances. A delicate balance between past and present held coherence, guiding homeward alongside love, lighting every corner beyond shadows cast so long ago.